Most people think madness is the end of genius, but what if it's actually the price of it? Friedrich Nietzsche's life wasn't just a story of brilliance. It was a battlefield where vision collided with pain and truth clashed with society's limits. The tragedy: most people only see the collapse. They never notice the treasure buried inside it. I'm not here to give you the textbook version of Nietzsche. I'm here to take you through the hidden corners of his journey, the ones history politely skips over, the losses that shaped him, the friendships that broke him, the ideas so powerful they outlived both his voice and his sanity. And maybe, just maybe, by the end, you'll see why Nietzsche's story isn't just about philosophy, it's about us, about how each of us walks the line between creation and collapse, and why sometimes the descent is the only way to reach what we're truly searching for. Friedrich Nietzsche was born into a world that seemed far too small for the size of his mind. From an early age, life tested him. He lost his father at 5, his brother at 6, and grew up surrounded by strong female figures who shaped his sensitivity and discipline. It was as if destiny was already sharpening in him a vision for the profound and the tragic. As a child, Nietzsche displayed an extraordinary precociousness. While other boys played in the fields, he was diving into classical texts, absorbing music, and learning ancient languages with an almost unsettling ease. This brilliance was not just a gift, it was a burden, because the world rarely knows how to handle someone who's ahead of their time. But his health, that was his constant adversary. Nietzsche carried through life a fragile body, marked by relentless pain and recurring illnesses. His military experiences only worsened his condition, forcing him to seek relief in strong medicines and even experimental drugs. The curious thing is that, even in such circumstances, his mind continued to produce ideas that would forever change Western thought. And this is where his path begins to drift even further from the ordinary. Nietzsche's mind soared far beyond the limits of his fragile body. As a professor at such a young age, he stood out not just for his intellect, but for the daring nature of his ideas. His writings challenged the comfort zones of an academic world that preferred safety over confrontation. And, unsurprisingly, that same courage that elevated him also started to isolate him. One of the most defining relationships of his life was with Richard Wagner. At first, they shared artistic and philosophical visions that seemed unshakable, almost like two revolutionaries marching in sync. But as Nietzsche's ideas evolved, so did the distance between them. His growing independence of thought became a double-edged sword, brilliant, yet deeply lonely. Meanwhile, his health continued to decline. The combination of physical pain, intellectual isolation, and emotional strain weighed heavily on him. Then came 1889, in Turin, the famous breakdown. Nietzsche was found in the streets, in tears, embracing a horse in an act of overwhelming compassion. That moment marked the end of his public intellectual life, and the beginning of a long, silent chapter, one that would set the stage for how his legacy would be handled. After Nietzsche's death, the story of his work took a turn he never could have anticipated. His sister, Elizabeth, stepped in not as a guardian of his ideas, but as an editor who bent them to fit her own agenda. What was once a radical, deeply personal philosophy became twisted to align with political narratives Nietzsche openly despised. Elizabeth carefully curated his writings, selectively editing, omitting, and rearranging passages to reshape his voice. She attached his name to nationalist and anti-Semitic ideas, despite the fact that Nietzsche had openly rejected such beliefs during his lifetime. It was like placing a masterpiece under a distorted lens, brilliance still visible, but warped. For decades, this manipulation stained Nietzsche's reputation. His work was misinterpreted, misused, and even weaponized by political movements that were worlds apart from his intent. It wasn't until the mid-20th century that scholars began carefully dismantling this false narrative, restoring Nietzsche as one of the most original and daring thinkers of Western philosophy. But even today, the shadow of that distortion lingers. The cause of Friedrich Nietzsche's madness remains one of philosophy's most haunting mysteries. Some point to syphilis, others to a brain tumor, and some to the psychological toll of diving too deep into the human soul. After all, Nietzsche himself warned about staring into the abyss. But perhaps his own work wasn't just a warning, it was a personal confession. Nietzsche lived in almost complete isolation after his breakdown, surrounded by silence that only amplified his inner world. His life turned into a kind of philosophical alchemy, taking pain, solitude, and frustration, and trying to transmute them into something higher. It's the kind of transformation most people avoid, because it demands the price of comfort and certainty. And here lies the unsettling question. Did Nietzsche lose himself in that descent? Or did he find something so profound that it couldn't be communicated in ordinary words? Some have even wondered if his madness was a form of retreat, a withdrawal from a world that could never grasp the treasure he had uncovered. So, after walking through the storm of Friedrich Nietzsche's life, I have to ask you, what are you doing with your own battles? Are you numbing the discomfort, or are you using it as fuel to create something greater? His story reminds us that pain, isolation, and struggle can be the raw material for transformation if we dare to face them. What truths are you avoiding because they're uncomfortable? What treasures might be waiting in the places you're afraid to explore? These are the questions Nietzsche forces on us, and they're not meant to be answered in silence. I want to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments, because your perspective matters here. And if you want to keep uncovering stories like this, lessons hidden in the lives of the world's greatest minds, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notifications. That way, you'll never miss the next insight that could change the way you see everything.